Images of so-called invasion barges appear on social media, giving a peek into how China might get boots on the ground in Taiwan.
恢复军事审判制度，让军法官回到第一线。
Taiwan's president courts the idea of bringing back military tribunals, but not everyone's on board. When does free speech break the law? The government defends its actions against an influencer who promoted unification with China. Plus, a flurry of disinformation as the Philippines' ex-president faces trial in The Hague. A warm welcome to TaiwanPlus News. I'm Rhys Ayres. China may have found a way to get boots on the ground in Taiwan. New images of what are being called invasion barges, mobile harbours used to land men and material, have surfaced on social media. Our defence reporter Jaime Okan has more.
On Thursday, video posted on social media site Weibo shows what appears to be specialized barges that could be used for a Taiwan invasion. Back in January, a military news site known as Naval News was first to report that China is building at least 5 of these barges, or mini ports, that could be used and tailor-made for an amphibious attack. TaiwanPlus has obtained satellite imagery from a few days ago in southern China that shows what appears to be those same barges in a small amphibious exercise. People are concerned because China is looking for ways to get boots on the ground in an invasion of Taiwan. This would mean transporting hundreds of thousands of troops and equipment across the Taiwan Straits, either by air or by sea. And it's pretty unclear if China has those capabilities. Beijing has been practicing these kinds of operations for decades, but observers are now saying that with these barges, Beijing might actually be able to pull that off. Earlier, I spoke to Tom Sugar. He's an adjunct senior fellow at the Center for a New American Security, a think tank based in Washington, D.C.
The big surprise, and it was a surprise to me that we learned today, is that these apparently are intended to be linked together to form one much longer transfer assembly from the shore to the sea. So instead of 3 different landing points where you could project essentially a pier something like 300 meters out into the water, we're seeing now more like 800 to 850 meters that this thing could get out in the water, potentially for much larger areas of the Taiwanese coast. Now being able to get a pier from the shore all the way out deep enough water where you can have these ferries pull up and unload onto them. I think these will be much quicker to be set up, where you can wind up with a lot less warning, where they could potentially be moved if they need to for weather or threats, where they're not nearly as much of a fixed target as these normal floating piers are. Because these vessels are self-propelled, it appears. They're self-propelled. I imagine they're probably highly automated. And they basically you can just drive up and they lower these legs and lift themselves out of the water. And then you bolt the next one and connect to it, and the next one and connect to it. It really is quite something.
And Tom, well, we've known for a while that China is trying to increase that capability to transport soldiers and equipment across the Taiwan Strait in the event of a war with Taiwan. How concerning is this new development?
Well, I've said for several years now with respect to the use of roll-on, roll-off ferries that in the absence of the China civilian sea lift, if you're asking the question, and it's an important one, does China have the ability to invade Taiwan without civilian shipping, with only the PLA Navy's amphibious assault ships? The answer is clearly no. They don't have enough sea lift. But if you add in China's civilian shipping, and this is not theoretical, these civilian companies, the ferry companies, and roll and roll off vehicle carrier companies, they're organized auxiliaries of the Chinese military. They regularly practice. Their ships are built to defense standards. This is not something that they might think about doing someday. They are practicing doing it. To the question, can China invade Taiwan? I think goes from a no to maybe. Maybe they do, maybe they can. Maybe they do have the sea lift to do it. I think it's unlikely that these 6 vessels by themselves provide the capacity to successfully invade Taiwan. But what we have to remember is that China has literally dozens of shipyards that could probably build these. And these 6 were built by one shipyard in about 6 to 8 months.
We've reached out to Taiwan's defense ministry for a comment, but they have yet to respond. Now, it's important to remember that China's President Xi Jinping has mandated his military to be ready by 2027 to annex Taiwan by force if needed. That 2027 date does not mean that a conflict is certain, but with these new capabilities and these new barges being constructed, it does push China closer to its goal of having a modern fighting force and ultimately having a bigger concern on Taiwan's security. Leon Lian and Jaime Okan in Taipei for TaiwanPlus.
Patrol boats expelled 4 Chinese vessels from Taiwanese territorial waters on Thursday afternoon.
您已进入中华民国经限制水域，严重破坏区域和平稳定，影响海上航行安全及交通秩序，请立即转向水离。
The Chinese Coast Guard ships were found sailing around Taiwan's Jinmen Islands, which lie just kilometers from China's southeast coast. The incursion comes a day after a Chinese research vessel was also driven from Taiwan's territorial waters. More than 60 such incursions around Jinmen have been reported in the last 12 months. Military courts may be coming back to Taiwan over a decade after their abolition. President Lai Ching-te says Chinese infiltration of the military means they're needed again and that they'd have limited jurisdiction. But opposition lawmakers are questioning Lai's motives. John Van Trieste reports.
Military courtrooms like this one have been silent for 11 years, but they may soon see trials again as President Lai Ching-te pushes to put them back into use. In 2024 alone, Taiwan caught 15 active service members and 28 retired veterans spying for China. China claims Taiwan, and besides threatening to invade, it also tries to weaken Taiwan from within by infiltrating its military. President Lai says it's time to tackle this threat with military law, ending the decade-long hiatus. He says the military courts would only deal with military crimes.
恢复军事审判制度，让军法官回到第一线，与检调司法机关共同协力，处理现役军人涉犯叛乱、立敌、泄密、废除职务、抗命等军事犯罪之刑事案件。
Taiwan spent close to 40 years under martial law, and in the minds of some who lived through this authoritarian period, these military courts have unpleasant associations. But there's more recent history, too. The 2013 death of conscript Hong Zhongqiu in military custody set off a movement that effectively shut the courts down. Since 2014, they've only been used for mock trials during drills simulating wartime. Restarting court-martials will take the legislature's backing. The administration wants 5 changes to the law to make it happen. But the 2 opposition parties, who together have a legislative majority, are strongly against the idea. In the biggest opposition party, the Kuomintang, some question Lai's motives for trying to reopen the courts.
这个议题是可以讨论。现在恢复军事法庭就没有军中人权的问题了吗？那么，请问一下，赖清德总统认为我们要进入战时的状态了吗？
And some in the Taiwan People's Party say they see signs of flip-flopping in the administration.
就是我们现任的国防部长顾立雄讲的，我们绝对不允许军法复辟。 现在是赖清德总统狠狠打脸了我们的国防部长。
That's a view the opposition voiced again on Friday. But the defense minister says his long-held position against military courts hasn't changed. He says the new courts would be different from those of the past, with fair due process.
我们现在要重新打造的一个军事审判制度，是符合一个公平法院设计的审判制度，而要挥别过去那一段 被人诟病、不被人信任的军事审判。
But the skepticism from the opposition is setting this issue up to be a major point of debate in Taiwan's politics. Chris Ma and John Van Trieste for TaiwanPlus.
Taiwan's government says the law is clear that comments advocating for a Chinese invasion of Taiwan are illegal after a Chinese social media influencer living in Taiwan had her residency revoked. Cadence Caranta gives us the latest updates on the case.
Making headlines in Taiwan this week, a Chinese social media influencer married to a Taiwanese national had her residency revoked because she posted videos on social media which reportedly advocated for Taiwan's unification with China by military force.
大陆武力统一台湾已经不需要其他的理由了呀。
Taiwan's National Immigration Agency says statements by the influencer advocating for unification by force violate regulations governing Chinese citizens living in Taiwan, which say residency can be revoked if they threaten national security or social stability. The influencer, known as Yaya in Taiwan, will not be able to apply for another residency permit for 5 years and will have to leave Taiwan. Though, given her family situation, it's unclear exactly when.
他的配偶本来就是国人哦，那也共同育有亲生子女啊，所以有关他后续就是说出境的部分哦，我们目前正在审酌他的整个家庭团聚还有子女权益的这些因素综合考量，才会去做后续的一个适当的处置。
The influencer has defended herself, suggesting the decision violated her right to freedom of speech in Taiwan. But earlier this week, Taiwan's interior minister said freedom of speech is not an excuse to break Taiwan's laws. And at a Thursday press conference, the Mainland Affairs Council, which manages relations with China, had this to say.
我们是针对他宣扬武力统一台湾的这个部分，那在我们看来，这个并不是言论自由的保障范围啊。大家知道，联合国政治与人权公约第20条，它就有说。所谓的鼓吹战争是禁止的，是公约禁止。那这个公约其实在我们台湾是被承认为国内法，所以任何人在台湾鼓吹战争，特别是鼓吹用战争来攻打台湾，这个我们是绝对不允许。所以这并不是言论自由的保障范围。
A source familiar with the matter has confirmed to TaiwanPlus that the influencer remains married to a Taiwanese citizen. TaiwanPlus also learned that 2 other Chinese influencers have been reported to the immigration agency, and their cases are under investigation. Another Chinese citizen had her residency revoked in January after her Taiwanese husband died. In her case, authorities decided she was unstable and was at risk of disrupting social stability in Taiwan. The cases come as Taiwan's government unveils new measures to combat Chinese efforts to influence many aspects of Taiwanese society, from attempts at military infiltration and espionage, right down to grassroots social media content at the individual level. Howard Zhang and Cadence Quaranta for TaiwanPlus.
For more on how speech can be seen as a national security threat, reporter Chris Gorin spoke to political science professor at Suzhou University, Chen Fangyu.
So, Fang Yu, tell us, which laws has this Chinese influencer been accused of violating? And if a Taiwanese citizen made the same kinds of videos, would they also face punishment?
So basically, this influencer violates the Cross-Strait Act, which is a special law regulating Taiwanese people and the mainland Chinese people. Taiwanese people cannot help China's government to do some political affairs. So I think that is the main reason that the government is now punishing residents by revoking the permit. And for the citizens of Taiwan, then we have different laws. So for example, we have the anti-infiltration law that is for the election period. Especially in 2019, we revised a series of national security laws. So you cannot take money for China and organize or to recruit the government officials or the military personnel and to promote for unification or to sell out our information, classified information. So we do have different regulations for citizens or for some of the immigrants.
What would you say to those who argue that democratic societies should tolerate objectionable speech, especially political speech, since criticizing the government is fundamental to democracy?
Well, admittedly, political speech is very essential, is very important. So I totally agree. However, freedom of speech has its boundaries. So we don't encourage, we don't endorse hate crimes. We don't endorse that everybody can insult others and saying that it is a freedom of speech. Yeah, that's illegal. So I think the basic point I want to make is that freedom of speech is not unlimited. So according to our constitution, the clause 23, we have several preconditions that says that the government can make some restrictions on freedom of speech or other individual rights. And I do agree that we can support for unification with China. We can support for China. We can have a preference on China. It's all fine. However, right now, in this case, it is a case that people support China's armed conflict, military actions on Taiwan. that is encouragement of the military invasion. That is a violent annexation. So it is not a freedom of speech because we cannot endorse any kinds of violence. And China's military actions is a violence, a state violence against Taiwan. And also it will destroy our democracy. So we cannot say that it's kind of political speech, or we cannot say that justify that it's just a freedom of speech.
So for you, you're not worried that this kind of action from the government could lead to more restrictions on speech down the road?
I don't think so, because in democracies, we have checks and balance. The government is doing or having some of the regulations or enforcement, and then the legislatures and the laws, including the cross-trade laws and others, the series of the national security laws are all passed by the legislature in recent years. And also, we have the judicial systems to make a balance. If the government is making too much restrictions on citizens, then there must be some rulings by the Constitutional Court, and the Constitutional Court can make the final decision. So I think that the system works very well in Taiwan right now. So I don't think that there's a danger of this. But I do admit that we have to be very careful about any kinds of punishment on people's or restrictions on people's individuals' right.
That was Chris Gorin speaking with Professor Chen Fangyu. Investigators have searched the home of leading Kuomintang lawmaker Fu Kunqi for evidence of bribery. They suspect Fu may have sent a hairstyling kit worth around $300 to fellow KMT lawmakers to win favor during a recent election. They say the money for this gift may have come from China. Fu says he has not done anything wrong. Coming up after the break, the great gig in the sky. Meet Taiwan's all-female funeral marching band.
Game on Taiwan. The wait is over. Baseball returns as the CPBL kicks off its new season. The UBA and HBL basketball tournaments are heading to their epic final showdown, where the best teams fight for ultimate victory. And the excitement doesn't stop there. Tour de Taiwan is here, with the world's top cyclists pushing their limits through Taiwan's breathtaking landscapes. Game on Taiwan. The action starts here.
Welcome back. You're watching TaiwanPlus News. US President Donald Trump is doubling down on his tariff threats, proposing a 200% tariff on European wines. That's in addition to tariffs of 10 to 25% on goods from neighbors Mexico and Canada to take effect next month.
We don't need their lumber. We don't need their energy. We have more than they do. We don't need anything. We don't need their cars. I'd much rather make the cars here. And there's not a thing that we need. Now, there'll be a little disruption, but it won't be very long. But they need us. We really don't need them. And we have to do this. I'm sorry, we have to do this, yes.
The tariff threat on wines came in response to a European Union tax on American bourbon. Trump's sweeping import taxes have triggered retaliation around the world, sparking fears of a global trade war. Former Philippine President Rodrigo Duterte is expected to appear at the International Criminal Court on Friday, but fake news campaigns on social media are spreading disinformation regarding his arrest and the case against him. Earlier, I spoke to Celine Sampson, who leads the online verification team at Verifiles, a Manila-based non-profit news and fact-checking organization about disinformation in the Philippines.
We've seen a lot of fake news circulating online, particularly in relation to Duterte's recent arrest. What form does this misinformation take in the Philippines, and what channels are being abused?
There are a lot of forms that the disinformation surrounding Duterte's arrest have taken. I mean, every single day since then, we have received tips from Filipinos on posts from social media that they want us to fact check. So a lot of them are text posts. We have also seen a number of videos that have been taken out of context. Yeah, so and a lot of fake quote cards as well. That is a staple in disinformation in the Philippines. It's an easy hundreds of thousands of Filipinos that the disinformation pieces or campaigns are reaching.
And do we know if these misinformation campaigns are centralized or organized? Where are they coming from?
I'm not so sure yet about how organized it is. I mean, I would say that there is probably some bit of organization there. Some of the claims have come from YouTube channels that we have fact checked in the past. And oftentimes, I mean, there are studies that prove that in the Philippines, disinformation is a business. But then there are also a lot of claims that, appear to be have been shared or published by regular Filipinos. There have been some that have come from elsewhere. I would say we still have to do a bit of digging to see if there has been some foreign interference there.
A recent survey from Social Weather Station reported that almost 60% of Filipinos surveyed recognized that misinformation was a problem on the internet. Is that an encouraging figure? And are people becoming more media literate?
A lot of people now use the term fact-checking and also fake news or misinformation, disinformation. So there is awareness, but how confident they are in detecting disinformation, misinformation, that's where the problem is. It's such a huge problem in the Philippines. Like, it affects whether or not people take vaccines or who they vote for in the elections. When it comes to media literacy, you don't immediately see the results, I would say. It takes quite some time for you to see if there's behavior change. But at least you equip students, you equip teachers with the skills to identify misinformation and disinformation, to think more critically about what they see online.
That was Celine Sampson from Verifiles, a Philippine non-profit news and fact-checking organization. You might not expect a lot of pep and verve at a funeral, but in central Taiwan, an all-female marching band is playing the old hits for the newly departed. Jonathan Kaplan has the story.
There's no sports victory, no grand opening. Today, like most days they work, the Dazhong Women's Band is playing a funeral.
乐队它的作用也就是说，有时候热闹一点也对了，因为年纪有了，年纪上了80几岁才会这样。你要是50、60岁，一般人不敢这样，会被人家笑，讲说那么年轻走了，你还那么虚张。
Brass, drums, miniskirts, and twirling batons may seem out of place at a somber ceremony, but as joyful celebrations of life gain popularity at funerals in the West, Taiwan's spin on sending off the deceased is already a tradition. Band leader Xu Yazi married into it.
大众女子乐团是早期是婆婆在她23岁的时候成立的，然后我是后来嫁到我婆家这边，然后接婆婆的工作这样子，所以大众女子乐团应该，我大概算一下，应该有50年的历史。
The work has its demands. Band members are no strangers to the wee hours. Preparations sometimes beginning well before dawn.
今天早上是4点半出发，他们大概就是要提早10分钟到集合地点集合。
Despite the rigors of playing in a funeral marching band, band commander Huang Shiyu doesn't like to complain.
现在年轻人比较怕，就是没办法早起啊，最困难。但是其实只要习惯就好了，对，不然其实我觉得音乐这种东西好像说困难也没有到很困。
With one of the lowest birth rates in the world, Taiwan is set to become a super-aged society in 2025, meaning more than 20% of the population will be aged 65 or older. Demand for flashy funerals may rise with the aging populace. Band leader Xu hopes young musicians will continue the tradition.
这种工作是需要有年轻人传承，对，因为这种工作是要有活力才有办法展现出来的一种工作嘛，对啊，所以说我还是很希望鼓励年轻人可以加入我们的行列。
过程一定会很辛苦，但是当你成功的时候，你会觉得这辛苦是值得的。对。
If you happen to live to a ripe old age in central Taiwan, your next of kin may someday call upon the Dazhong Women's Band to march you away to a different beat. Dolphine Chen and Jonathan Kaplan for TaiwanPlus.
Thank you for watching TaiwanPlus News. You can visit the TaiwanPlus website or follow our social media for more stories from Taiwan and around the world. Finally, today we leave you with images of rare vehicles from the Ford Heritage Fleet on display at the company's headquarters in the US state of Michigan. I'm Rhys Ayres. Take care and see you next time.